Inhale all the way up.
Wow. Well, welcome to Revolutionary Health, a program of the Counter Narrative Project. Well, it is 2019, and we are happy to have all of you with us tonight. So, a few reminders. Please make sure that you are here on YouTube watching us. Please make sure that you subscribe to our page so that you can stay in touch with Revolutionary Health and all of the other videos that we have. You should also make sure that you follow us on Facebook. You can also follow us on Twitter at Building Desire, and you can follow us on Instagram. Is Johnnie Kornegay. I am the Director of Mobilization for the Counter Narrative Project, and I am joined by
Justin Smith. I am a graduate student in Behavioral Sciences and Health Education here in Atlanta at Emory University, where I do research on HIV prevention among Black gay men, and I'm also a yogi.
I'm Daniel Edwards, sociologist, photographer, also a yogi, and currently in grad school at SCAD for an MFA in photography.
Awesome. Thank you both so much for joining. If you haven't guessed, today's show is about the health benefits of yoga, and I don't know about y'all, but I'm already warm and sweating. Thank y'all so much for bringing us into this with some stretches. So, some things to remember. If you are watching right now, you should go ahead and ask your questions in the chat box. So if you're watching online, it'll be right up there in your right-hand side, whatever's the right from when you're watching. So go ahead and leave any questions that you have, and we'll do our best to answer questions as we go throughout the show. But we're going to have a discussion about yoga. So I'm going to keep this in mind. None of us are yoga instructors. In fact, I have done yoga a few times in my life, and I don't consider myself like an expert, so that's why I have Justin and Daniel here to walk me through that. So we are talking about personal experience as it relates to yoga. And so where I'd like to start, you both brought some poses that are like your favorite poses. So Justin, we'll start with you, and we're going to talk about your favorite pose, and we'll demonstrate it for us.
Okay. So this pose is called Standing Bow Pose, and you could start out by putting, let's do it on the left side. So I'll have your left hand out and sort of connect it to your ribs here. And just make sure that your right leg is solid. So you want to make sure that this is strong and solid, that all the muscles are engaged. Then you're going to kick back and grab the inside of your foot, so like your ankle. And then you're going to take your right hand, place it up to the sky, and then you're going to charge your body forward as you're kicking back with your left foot. So you kick, 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 and then come out.
Thank you so much for that. And we're going to talk about that in a minute. Daniel, what's your pose?
My pose is downward facing dog. It is probably one of the most common poses that happens in yoga. It's a pose of rest, but it is also a transitional point into a lot of different poses in yoga, whether it's sitting or in inversion, any number of things. So what we'll do is inhale up first, and on the exhale you will dive forward, placing your palms as flat as possible, and slowly walk out. And so from here, you will press up and back. Your ears should be around your biceps. The goal in this pose, and it can take quite a long time to master this, is to get your heels flat on the mat. That takes a lot of time, and there are plenty of yoga instructors that still practice that on a regular basis. But from here, like, you can pedal your feet, release the hips, and if you want to make sure that you are in proper alignment with this pose, you roll forward and get into a plank.
Got it.
And in a plank, your wrists, elbows, and shoulders should be aligned. And then press up from your core, and then back down into your heels. can come back into plank, lower your knees, and then sit back. Come out of it.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah.
So please feel free to sit in any way you want. Thank you both so much for that. Okay, so first thing that I always keep in mind, and everybody who's watching probably saw this, is I wasn't fully able to like engage and reach some of the poses, but I still did like what I could do in those poses. How important is that? Is just kind of doing what you can in yoga.
Well, so, I think that, there's so many shapes that your body can make in yoga. But it's also important to know that every body is different. And so there are a lot of poses that, folks will come in on day one, and just because of the way that their body is set up, they can like instantly go into the pose. And for other folks, it takes years of practice for those poses to sort of unfold. But and that can vary from day to day. Like there's sometimes where I'm in a class and a pose that I feel like normally like I can sort of get into an expression of it, like it doesn't unfold for me that day. That's okay. One of the things I love about yoga is that they call it a yoga practice.
Yeah.
And so it's this intentionality of getting to your mat and just doing what you can on a given day, but it's the discipline of doing it with regularity.
Got it.
So, but yeah, I think that you're doing yoga, when you walk into the room.
Okay. So it's kind of because what I did realize in doing just what we did is there are times when my body just kind of naturally does some of those things. Thoughts on, well, I'm curious. So for the both of you, Daniel, I'll start with you. When did you discover yoga?
I discovered yoga about 4 years ago. I have a brother of mine that started practicing yoga pretty regularly. And it was something that I always wanted to do, but never knew where to get started or had access. And he was actually working at a yoga studio at the time. And so he was like, come here, the classes are really great. And I went. And as far as physical practices go, like for me, it was like the most natural thing I think I've ever done. Like my first class, and it should be like this, is syncing movements and everything to the breath. And I just would always say that like it was as easy as breathing. And so I just fell in love with the practice. And at times when I didn't have anything else, like I always had yoga. I always had that practice to keep me centered. My favorite question when anyone asks about yoga is like, do I have to be flexible in order to do it? And I tell them like, well, yoga isn't for the flexible, it's for the willing.
Ooh,
like you just have to be willing to come. You have to be willing to get on the mat and stay on your mat. Like that's something else too. That's a practice. Is like be mindful on your own mat and not be looking at someone else because you're looking at someone else's chapter.
I love that. Thank you so much for that. Justin, for you, when did you get introduced to yoga?
So it was about maybe 8 years ago. One of my friends, wanted to go to a yoga class, and it was actually it was a Bikram hot yoga studio. And so,
what is Bikram hot yoga?
So Bikram is a particular style of kind of hot yoga that is practiced. It has a pretty set sequence. So there's 26 different poses that are part of that particular sequence. And there's been a lot of controversy with Bikram as a figure, and we won't go into that right now. But that was my first introduction to an actual yoga class. And although one of my roommates was a yoga instructor, and I guess I just had all these notions about what yoga was, and I thought it was not for people like me. And so over the course of the years that I've been practicing, I've really kind of challenged that notion. And it's been great being in Atlanta and finding that there are other black and brown people that do yoga on a regular basis. And so it's been wonderful to kind of get to be a part of that community. So.
I'm glad you mentioned that because it actually brings up an interesting story. So I attended my first yoga class in actually the mid-2000s. So this is like 2005 or so. I was living in Michigan at the time, Ann Arbor, Michigan, and was looking for a way to relax. So I kept reading all these things like, yoga, this is a wonderful way to relax. So I'm like, I'm going to take a yoga class, paid my little money, and I was the only black man in the class. So I was, of course, instantly like nervous. And I remember so vividly, so I come in with my mat and I'm like, yes, I'm going to do this because I'm a trooper. And so we're doing the class and there was this pose where there was a chair behind us and I needed to put my feet, so I needed to lay down and put my feet on the chair behind me, right? This is day one. This is like an intro. And I'm like, okay. And I said to the lady, I was like, oh, you know what, I can't do that. And I tried, right? And the person said, yes, you can. She grabbed my feet and tucked them under the folding chair. And I was like, so I'm breathing. Now I'm in this position now. And I'm like, this is hard. This feels awful. This is not relaxing. I never want to do this ever again. And that was my introduction to yoga as a practice, right? So I was scared of it. So I guess this brings me to what do y'all look for in classes and from your instructors?
I think that, first I think you want to feel like you are welcome in the space and it's energy, right? And so like there's some yoga studios you walk in and you're just like, you get a bad vibe from it, or the instructor doesn't sort of sync up with what you need, and you can kind of feel that energetically, right? As far as like technical skill, like I think that particularly for beginners, if you find a teacher who is very cued into like alignment, and so like like if you don't know what you're doing, you can certainly injure yourself, and you want to have an instructor that can that knows the body, that can kind of look at you and say, like, if you do it this way, you probably, increase the risk of injury and can kind of steer you away from that. So I think particularly for beginners, it's even more important that you have kind of a more experienced instructor that can kind of key into that. But I think, after you've been doing it for a while, like, one of the things that I really admire about Daniel is that, like, I came to see him doing lots of home practice. And, like, so you kind of can also do a lot of that on your own. But I think teachers are really important. I don't want to say that, like, I think having, someone that can guide you, that's been doing it for a while, particularly as someone who's newer to the practice, is really important.
Thank you. Can you talk about that too, like your method and your practice?
So when I started off in a studio, and I wanted to continue my practice, but financially wasn't able to like keep up with going to a regular class as often as I wanted to practice. So when that happened, I found apps. I found videos. I also would practice with other people, and then started and developed my own kind of flows. Sun salutations are really accessible and really easy, and get you into the repetitive nature of what yoga is, and in alignment with breath and movement. And so that's what got me going with my practice, especially if I was just at home and couldn't go to the studio. And so I'm a really big advocate for studios that have accessible classes, that do community service, volunteer, free stuff. I'm all about, because yoga is more than just a physical practice. It's Western yoga has commodified it in that way or monetized it in that way. But yoga is a spiritual practice. It's that has this physical component to it, and no one should pay to have to be spiritual. I've always believed that, and so classes that are accessible, I think, are really important. Yeah, because we also have to strike the balance too of the society that we live in, and everyone needs to live and eat, and this is a way that people also live and eat. So it's balancing that, that need with the needs of others too.
Yeah.
I'm all about accessibility.
Yeah. That actually brings me into, I want to talk about, so one of the health benefits that I find, even just in doing what we did here, is how the breathing calms, like it centers everything. And so when I think about the health benefits of yoga, it really, for me, I even felt it in that bit. Can you each talk about, for you, a time when yoga really became like something that was important for you from a health standpoint, where that was what you needed, either mental health or physical health?
Well, I think, graduate school being very kind of stressful and at times really awful experience. Yoga has been something that has helped me to kind of ground myself. I think of it as moving meditation. And so I really like doing yoga in the morning because it's just a wonderful way to open up my day. And no matter what else happens in the day, in the day could go left really easily. At least I know that I got to my mat and I got in an hour of yoga, and that hour is for me.
Yeah.
And so I think for me it's a important piece of my mental health, and it does not sort of take the place of therapy, but I think that it certainly has improved my mental well-being in immeasurable ways. So it is very key to my kind of, my life in that way.
We have a question from Trey Sam World 1.
Hey, Trey Sam.
Who says, can you start at home first?
Great question.
Yeah, I think that...
I can repeat the question too.
Yeah. Sure. So the question is, can you start, with a home practice? Sure, and I know that there are a lot of people who come to yoga from, kind of home instructional videos, and there's so many, kind of yogis who have YouTube and Instagram channels, and there are apps out there that allow you to kind of sort of follow along with other instructors. So that's certainly a way that folks can kind of find their mat, for sure.
I agree. Asana Rebel has a really, really good app. It's more or less on the pricier side when it comes to getting that to do your own home practice. I started off with FitStar Yoga, and again, it has an instructor. It has someone that's walking you through each of the poses. FitStar Yoga is actually really nice because they have a lot of freestyle flows that are quick. You can pick something from 5 minutes to an hour or more.
Oh, wow.
There's standard kind of practices that are on the app. You can adjust them according to difficulty and time, any variant of those things. And so you can have a home practice.
Okay.
And like I said, again, when you can,
right,
go to a studio at least once for an intro class. Do your research around that. Especially if finances are limited, so you don't feel like you're going to be wasting your money, and ask around. Research is really important. It's finding a trainer too.
Right.
You don't want to just give your money to anyone when it comes to something like this. And it's the same thing with the yoga practice. You don't want to do that with just any studio. But I'm still a huge advocate for the in-person, interpersonal interaction with another live human being that can walk to you and feel and help you and help align you. Because there's nothing like that aha moment where you turned your hands a little bit clockwise or counterclockwise and your entire body ignites because you are in perfect alignment, and you're in perfect alignment for the first time, and you really feel this is what this is supposed to be, and you never forget that. That gets ingrained into your body. You never forget what it's like to feel aligned.
Yeah.
Which is that spiritual nature of yoga too, is knowing what it feels like to be aligned.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How have each of you changed as a result of practicing yoga? You think?
Well, I think that I feel just better about myself in a lot of ways. So one of the things that yoga has helped me with is just feeling stronger and more confident. And I think one of the things I love about yoga is that you practice things on your mat that you can apply to other areas of your life. And so for me, a lot of it has been feeling like, okay, like, you know, I'm definitely feeling stronger. I'm feeling more centered when I'm in the room. And so the journey for me has been figuring out, like, how do I walk with that feeling outside of the room? And so, like, to the extent to which I've been able to successfully do that, that has been a big change for me. I think the other piece of yoga that it's helped with is just around kind of my body image issues. And so, like, ironically, you know, because so many studios are mostly women, like, I felt like going to, like, a general, like, big box kind of gym was very intimidating to me. So I think two aspects of it, in that yoga really is about kind of focusing on your own mat and sort of your own practice. So that's, like, number one. But also, I didn't feel like, you know, I didn't feel like I had to sort of, you know, put on a show for other people, you know, and that just helped me kind of feel better about my body, you know, in a lot of ways. And so that's been something else that yoga's helped me with.
Amazing, thank you.
It's been discipline for me. Being able, because I think I'm a superhero sometimes and can manage it all at one time.
Right.
But yoga has taught me what it's like to really hone in and focus on one thing at a time, and knowing what it feels like to be really in that. And so in perfect practice makes perfect. And so taking that off my mat, like, I can being able to focus on any particular task, any particular situation, any particular person, and just really give my full attention. And so I'm not feeling like really manic or bouncing all over the place. Like, that's a centering, disciplined thing for me, and it's increased that for me, and also patience.
So we're going to talk about being able to enter classes and all of those things. I, of course, told you about my first experience. I'm curious to know, for the both of you, if a person is sitting at home and they're watching this show and they're like, oh my goodness, I think I want to do this. Where would you have them start? Like, should they Google? Is there people that they should reach out to or look at on social media? Like, how should they start?
I can provide a list. Can we, like, write it down and post it?
We can actually put some things in the comments for after the show too. So if there are some resources, we can certainly do that.
One suggestion that has been given to me that I have not tried out yet, but I'm going to, is actually right across the parking lot right here at Tough Love Yoga.
Yeah.
That they have a really accessible, affordable classes. I think all of their classes are $10.
Yep.
Nirvana Yoga has a, like, noon $5 class on Fridays for sure that I know, and I love their space. Their energy is great. There's also, and this is maybe like a higher level thing that I've gotten into, practicing nude yoga.
Well, let's talk about that. Okay, I'm curious to know.
Which has been amazing for, like, one, body image, discipline, staying on your mat, and desexualizing nudity. And really desexualizing it, and at the same time being able to recognize beauty in the body, and being able to disconnect those two things, that they are not mutually, you know, exclusive. So that is something else that I think isn't necessarily an intro point for someone, but, like, that is something that can be worked up to, that I'm a huge advocate for.
Yeah, I would double click on that too. Like, as I mentioned, like, I think yoga has helped me with a lot of my, you know, body image issues, and, you know, nude yoga was definitely a part of that for me as well. So
I have a question about that. So do you get an erection when you're doing nude yoga? When you say desexualize?
No, you don't. because you are so physically active. It's like it's the same thing as going for a run or like weightlifting or any other physical practice. Like your body is too busy to get aroused. And I remember my first class, I only ended up really getting nude because I got so hot. And it was an option, like that was my available option, like to stay mindful in my practices. Like I can get fully nude here. And I've practiced that. I had practiced that before on my own at home, and loved it because of the my greater capacity to stretch and to lean and to like really get into my poses unrestricted by anything. But like the new yoga class was like I got hot. Like, I just didn't want to overheat, and I was like, okay, underwear's coming off, and then everybody ends up nude by the end of the class.
So it doesn't start that way necessarily.
It doesn't start that way, and you don't have to fully derobe if you don't want to.
What was the composition of the class?
The nude yoga class that I went to was mixed of men and women.
Okay.
Varying sexualities, like all black.
Wow. So I'm curious. This actually brings me back to the staying on your own mat too, because I imagine that there is this teaches you the discipline of being able to like, I have to focus on myself. One, because I would be embarrassed to get an erection in front of like a bunch of people anyway. So it would actually center like focus on yourself. And I'm wondering if that's one of the feelings that does come from it too.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, the nude yoga class that I attended was an all-male class.
Okay.
And yeah, I remember from that practice, it was the most like focused on myself I've ever been in the practice, which was really like incredible. It was an incredible feeling to feel that sort of like in tune with my body. But it was also just a very comfortable space. Like that had been like a challenge to myself. Is like, you know, can I actually do this type of class? And I ended up taking a friend of mine with me, which kind of I think helped a little bit. But initially, you know, once we got disrobed, like it kind of became like a non-issue. But yeah, I think I would center, everything that Daniel said is that, it really does help you sort of focus on yourself. And it's also just a beautiful practice. I think in this society we do sort of sexualize bodies in a way that doesn't always have to be that way. Like it can be both, right? You could sort of be naked and not be sexual, and you could also recognize the power of the erotic as well. So.
Yeah. I'm curious to know now, so bodies, like, did you see varying body types in the classes that you attended?
Yeah, absolutely.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you for that. And so my last question for the both of you, and what do you foresee in your individual practices? Like, how far do you want to take the practice of yoga in your personal lives? Do you just want to keep it personal? Do you want to teach? Like, what's your goals?
I mean, I see kind of potentially becoming an instructor at some point in the future. I definitely would love to do that at some point. Because I feel like one of the other pieces of it is that I don't see many people who look like me in the front of the room. And I would love to kind of help to correct that. So yeah, it's definitely something that I see sort of in sort of a future for myself. But for now, just trying to be very dedicated to my practice, to deepen my practice, to learn as much as I can. But, I could see in the future, being in the front of the room.
Same. Definitely. Teaching is definitely on my path.
Yeah.
And I want to eventually get to the level where I am teaching other teachers, like people who are there to become instructors themselves. Like that is my goal.
Are there any black gay yoga instructors in Atlanta?
Yes, the nude yoga class that I was talking about.
How would they? If somebody was interested in I guess we could put comments in the in terms of like how people can find out about yoga classes.
Yeah. So the instructor that I do yoga with or nude yoga with is his name is EJ. His Instagram is by_ELLR. Yeah. And he does a lot of like body work and alignment, like off the mat. And he's really great at what he does.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, and we'll make sure that we include that in the comments as well. I want to thank you both for just being being willing to do this. And I really do feel like this is such an amazing opening for 2018 to talk about this topic, because I know that it is something that people have been thinking about. And so for those of you that are watching, if there are questions that we didn't answer and you would like to ask those questions, please feel free to leave a comment on the video and we'll make sure that we get back to you. So a couple of notes. So once again, make sure that you hit subscribe if you haven't done so already. Follow us on Facebook at Counter Narrative Project, on Instagram at The Counter Narrative, and on Twitter at Building Desire. You can visit thecounternarrative.org and sign up for our mailing list. Come back here next week. We are going to be talking about testicular cancer next week. It is a topic that we started to talk about a bit last year, and we're going to dive in deeper on next week's show. So come right back here to YouTube, and we will go live with testicular cancer. Any final thoughts, y'all?
Thank you. This was wonderful. So.
No problem. Thank you to everyone joining us this evening, and we will see you next week. Bye, everybody.
Bye.